Welcome to this podcast, where we'll be exploring the inspiring journey of someone who's overcome great adversity. Throughout our lives, we all face challenges that can seem insurmountable. These obstacles can be physical, emotional, financial, or social, and they can test us in ways we never imagined. In this podcast, we will hear the powerful story of someone who has faced adversity head-on and emerged stronger on the other side. Through the struggles, they have gained invaluable sight and wisdom, which they will share with us today. We'll hear about their lowest moments, the hurdles they faced, and the triumphs that followed. We will learn about the people who supported them along the way and the strategies they used to keep moving forward, even when the going got tough. The purpose of this podcast is to provide inspiration and motivation to those who are currently facing adversity. We hope that by hearing about someone else's journey, you'll be encouraged to keep pushing forward and never give up on your dreams. So get ready to be inspired as we embark on this journey through adversity together. We got the latest or the newer first edition of Journey Through Adversity, and first up is Stephen. Welcome, Stephen. Thanks for coming down today.
No, thank you.
From Canary Wharf.
Yeah.
Does he work in? Stephen and I met, I think, at the first parent social that we did at the Dilly back last December, and we had a good conversation about everything that I've experienced and what you've experienced. But I'll hand over to Stephen. Stephen, tell us about your journey.
Thank you. So, yeah, it's been a long one, and yeah, thanks for having me on as well. It's in a weird way, it's quite exciting to be able to share with somebody who has had similar experiences, and also be able to, in the background, know that I'm being able to perhaps reach out to people who've had similar experiences as well. Yeah,
definitely.
So thank you. In terms of my journey, so my daughter is Lily May. She was diagnosed in 2017, end of 2017, with an optic pathway glioma. She went through a tough period to get diagnosed, where she suffered from something called diencephalic syndrome, which is where children fail to thrive but appear happy, in fact appear euphoric.
And is it rare?
Rare and caused by an imbalance of hormones, and ultimately caused by her tumour.
Okay.
So from around August 2017, she started to lose weight when she was only 9 months old, and she started to then refuse food as well. And we went through a number of different investigations, probable causes, and ended up, through some help of our family, speaking to a doctor who expressed concerns, and got us referred to our local hospital, who then fairly quickly put her on an NG feeding tube immediately before they diagnosed her, and spent about a week looking through all the different possible issues that she could have, none of which showed anything conclusive, until shortly. See, this I guess we'll come to this a little bit later. I've blurred the exact details, but until shortly after her first birthday, when we then had a brief but frank conversation with that same doctor about what possibilities could be left. And a day later, we did an MRI scan and found that she had a brain tumour on her optic pathway in the centre of her brain, around the size of a tangerine at the time. And so she was 1 year old, and by that time she had started to develop more obvious symptoms of her problem. She had a nystagmus in her eyes, which is where your eyes shake, and that was, in a strange way, very scary but very helpful, because it started to present beyond just a purely nutritional problem, and started to show
clinical problem.
Something more clinical, something more severe, that was then helped us very quickly get the help that we needed. So that was, and I don't remember the specific date, and my wife will kill me for that, because not that I don't remember, but I almost have shut that away.
Yep.
And deliberately locked it up, so I don't think about that date, and I can't center any focus around that date. But on that date in November 2017, she was then diagnosed with a brain tumor, and fairly immediately, a few days after, started chemotherapy and steroids to get treatment for that.
Okay.
And that also involved transitioning from our local hospital to Great Ormond Street, where she then received dedicated treatment from Great Ormond Street and has been there since.
And it's been like, she's doing well now, Lily.
Yeah, so fast forward 5.5 years, she's been...
It's a long time.
She's had 3 different sets of chemotherapy and multiple surgeries, and most recently, a month ago, she had a surgery to debulk a cyst on her brain. But since last year, when she finished, February last year, when she finished her final chemotherapy, she's been doing really well. She's, in terms of lasting effects from all of those things that have happened over that period of time, she's had blindness in one eye and hormonal problems, for which she receives treatment for both. She will for sure have lasting effects in later life due to her the chemotherapies that she's had. But other than that, I'm really happy to say she's very much
thriving?
able to live definitely thriving, very much able to live what you would call, in inverted commas, a normal life. And she goes to school and plays really well, and she's doing
but
really
to her,
well.
it's no different. Like, as you say, she was very young when...
To her, it's no different. She's always lived with this. She can tell that things are slightly different for her. She can tell that she's held back a little bit, if you'd like, by her eyesight and by her issues. And but other than treating it as just something that slows her down a bit, she doesn't really.
The kids are amazing. They just power through, don't they?
Yeah, I'd say power through is a perfect way of describing it.
Hugh, like kids, we learn fear as adults.
Yeah.
If someone would have told us that, like, I'm 40, someone would have told me what our children went through, I wouldn't get out of bed in the morning. I'd struggle.
Absolutely. She's done amazingly well, and the of course the interesting thing to process all of that as a parent is that absolutely none of it has been brought on her by anything that she did, anything that we did. It's just happened, and she's just dealt with it. She's dealt with it and continues to deal with it incredibly well. And she's a real inspiration to everyone around her, and me included.
Amazing. But so let's go back, because obviously we want to talk about how you dealt with this.
Yeah.
And Lily sounds like she's doing amazing, and it's amazing to hear. So I know you said you blurred it out. Let's go back, because I remember the night I was told that Hugh had cancer, and probably the same feeling that you had. I just went cold, shut down, didn't believe the words that come out of the doctor's mouth. If you can, if you probably blanked it out, I don't want you to take you back there.
No,
but obviously
give it a go, yeah.
There might be parents listening to this who've been the same and they don't understand how to feel about it. It's also a way of feeling that there is no way to feel about it, and you can feel. It's almost. I wasn't angry. I was like, "Whoa, what? This is like." It's never like my wife said to me. It's always someone else. You read about it in the paper. Yeah. I've read the Daily Mail this morning on my phone. There's 7 or 8 different stories about someone getting leukemia or cancer or something, and you read about these things. You think, "What? Like, this is on my doorstep now."
Yeah.
And I'm like, how did you feel when?
I'll for sure try and go back there, and because where some of the things where I've blanked them out, I've not blanked them out because they're too hard to revisit, but because I've just as a coping mechanism, just tried not to emphasize them too much as moments, individual moments, because for me, the things that I've grieved and dealt with over the years have not been tied to those individual moments. Okay. So hopefully that makes sense. Certainly, I remember very vividly being told the news. In fact, I wasn't actually at the hospital. I was at home working from home, and my wife rang me and said, "You better come down." And so I knew immediately what it was, just because of all the different tests we'd had before. So in that time, I all I was thinking about was not crashing the car.
Yeah.
So I was deliberately boxing the emotions away in my head so that I could focus on driving. And I was probably driving very erratically, but thinking I was fine.
Yeah.
I then went in and then received the news, and then I almost heard it for the first time.
Yeah.
So I then heard it from my wife, from the doctors, and the overwhelming feeling I remember feeling was that, and because they told us immediately that her tumor was a non-malignant tumor, so it was something that would need urgent treatment, but it wasn't what you would call stage 4 or with a prognosis at that time. So my instincts immediately were telling me that this was going to be this was going to be a complete change to our lives. It was going to require a complete restructure of our lives, and it was going to require us to basically dedicate everything to this.
Yeah.
The best thought that comes to mind is almost, imagine if you found out your child had suddenly lost both their legs. It's my feelings were similar at that time, where I was absolutely worried about how a number of different side effects could cause her to lose her life, or how those could work out. But I knew instinctively that it was about treating her, about her quality of life, and about how that was going to affect our family life. And so my tendency to try and solve problems and work on problems meant that all I could think about at that time was what we needed to do next to get her better. Get a plan together, what was going to happen next. And so in that immediate moment, I was focused on telling family, comforting my wife, asking the doctors as many questions as I could while we had their attention.
Yep.
I was still in shock, and I was in bits, crying everywhere and really, really struggling. But I felt like I was trudging through mud, if you like, and like I had somewhere I was looking to go to.
Like a destination you had to sort of reach.
I knew I had something ahead of me. Where 2 days later, after we left the hospital, we left the local hospital and we started our transition to Great Ormond Street, and we went for a quiet period over the weekend. We went home. Yeah. About midnight that night, that is when I got up to go to the toilet, and that was when I felt that punch in the gut moment where I just collapsed, and suddenly everything hit me. And that was where that became a complete overload of emotions and despair at that point in time. So I remember that changing from when I was around my family and when I was trying to almost like come up with a plan, execute a plan. I was emotional, but coping, I suppose you would describe it as. When I had that first quiet moment back at home with Lily, back at home with my wife, back at home, almost as if we'd just gone back to normal for just a second. Yeah. That's when I then thought to myself, feelings of despair, feelings of overwhelming emotion, and hopelessness of how am I ever going to do this? How can I possibly do this? And for context, I think I was 23. Yeah, I was 23 at the time. So it had already been a big life change for me to have a child young, and I was starting out as fairly new into a job. I was only a year into my first graduate job then. So I was just thinking I was figuring out life, and I suddenly thought, how can I possibly skip to this point? Yeah, big time. And so I would say despair was the overwhelming feeling I had at that time. I remember
when we were told about Hugh, it's like, do you know, like as the dad and the father, and sort of, I don't know how to describe it, but I just felt like I needed to rally the troops. Yeah. I needed to say, right, I'm the shield. I'm going to tell everyone this is what we're doing. Yeah. And then I'm going to protect my wife. And then, but she was probably protecting me. I don't know about you, but she was protecting me. And she's same as you. My wife heard the information first. Yeah. And I was like, I felt kind of sorry for her to hear that first. Yeah, I did too. And driving, I remember following the ambulance, taking Hugh to Addenbrooke's. It was like this overwhelming, right, what has happened? Yeah. Why I don't understand it, because a week ago we were like being normal.
Yeah.
We're going and playing golf or doing something. It's like this sense of like, why? I don't know if you felt that's sort of, why me?
Yeah. Why me? Why me was a big feeling. And
Or why Lily?
why Lily?
Yeah.
Why? Yeah. Why?
How could someone so healthy
Yeah.
all of a sudden just become so ill?
Yeah.
That's the hardest thing I've found in my
the
experience.
The interesting thing for us as well is that I felt we'd overcome a big challenge already, which was having a child in the modern day is quite a young age.
Yeah.
And overcoming what we thought was adversity, which was, you know, scrambling, working extra jobs, doing all sorts of extra things to save money to be able to get a rental house so we could get her own room and buy a car and all of these things. So we already thought we were like starting to cruise. We thought, okay, we've got her. She's 9 months old now. She, you know,
Waiting for the walking, then waiting for
we were thinking we've done it. We made it.
Yeah.
And then to find out, whoa, hang on, I wasn't prepared for this. And I think one of I remember distinctly ringing both my parents from outside our local hospital to tell them the unfortunate news. And I remember I remember both of them said similar things. And along the lines of, you are now the only person who can get you through this. Or at least that was my interpretation. How that make you feel,
like hearing that? Because you are almost, you're on your own.
Yeah, it made me, so they weren't saying that, they were saying that in the most supportive way possible, but what they were effectively saying is, you know, they have no life experience they can give to me to get me through this. They have no medical skills that they can use to help me through this. They didn't experience this with me. So it made me feel scared and alone. It made me feel, it's the thing this is going to sound very odd, but I do thrive under pressure and with a challenge as well. So it did make me feel like I had a moment to myself where I just said to myself, you can do this. And I sort of just, and both my parents sort of said similarly. They said to me, you know, if anyone can do it, it's you.
Yeah.
Although, you know, you don't deserve it and you didn't ask for it, the best thing you can do is to power through this. Yeah. The best thing you can do is do right by your wife, do right by your daughter. And so I kind of had that, I guess, a similar moment to some moments I had when Lily was first born, when you go through that shock of becoming a new father. And I'm sure you feel the same, where you have to have a bit of a word with yourself and you say,
oh, well, wow, all of a sudden we're going to hospital as two, coming home, all of a sudden now this little package here is with me my whole life now.
Yeah.
You have to have a sense of sort of, wow, okay, this is what you become a dad on the ground, really.
You do.
And you think, well, more like you're walking with it. All of a sudden you walk out as a dad and you think, well, okay, this is the world now. I see the world differently.
Mum goes in as a mum, and you go in as a bloke who's just come from wherever.
You come out as a dad,
and you come out as a dad,
and the wife, and also you're shocked and awed by what your wife's just gone through.
Yeah, absolutely.
You're like blown away by the strength of them. But I don't know about you, I was blown away by the strength of my wife during this.
Yeah,
for her strength.
Yeah,
for me it was almost. I remember the conversation I had with my parents, and like I say, you sound driven, just like I believe I am as well. It's like nothing's going to hold me back, and I'm going to, whatever I need to do, I'm going to do to get through it.
Yeah.
I remember my dad's or mum saying to me, the only thing you need to do now is just be there for Hugh.
Yeah.
And whatever you're dealing with, just you got to be there. Imagine what he feels. Just be there strong for him. Yeah. And it sounds like the same sort of thing that you did. You just put your fears aside.
Yeah.
And I remember saying to my wife, look, if all you had a baby there or Lily was there or Hugh was there, what would they want? They'd want their mum or dad at the end of a bed just being like, really strong. Yeah. And putting your fears aside. And I remember thinking that to myself. I'm like, right, and I hate to say you can't say them, but like just suck it up and get on with it. And just sit there and stand there, suck it up, make out there's nothing happening.
Yeah. It obviously came with a cost over time to react like that, but that felt like the only thing I could do. In my head, I was just thinking, how can I best provide now? What can I do, short, medium, and long term, to give the best chance of success for like treating this illness. And so in the very early days with her illness, it was about, just organising around the hospital, organising family, things like that. So,
were you working at this time?
Yeah, working.
So you got to provide like, a living to put the roof overhead.
Yep. And thankfully, I owe a lot of loyalty to the people who the people I was working with at that point in time. My manager at that time, he, was incredibly supportive, and I maintained a medium-term focus on work.
Yeah.
But I was able to create space in the short term for my family. So I planned out, how I was going to return to work and what I was going to do when I got back. But in the short term, in that first few weeks, I was able to take that time off and have that time with my family and be there for my family.
It's a subject that's so often overlooked when you're talking about, like, with a child being born, that the birth's going to come, and that after 2-3 weeks, as a dad, you might go back to work, get out of the house, and the wife starts gaining a bit more confidence and things like that. When you're thrown in right into this cauldron of childhood illness and things like that, you don't know what the next month, 2 months, 3 months looks like. So you have no plans. So especially when we're trying to work and earn money, and you still got to keep a roof over your head. As we know, there are no financial help or packages for us as parents. So it's hard because you're trying to balance everything at the same time. And how did you manage to balance that? You said about your work, we're fortunate they were helpful to you.
Yeah.
But is there any way that you balanced it? You meant anything you did to try and balance it, to try and put everything in perspective? Because I remember trying to talk to people at work. I was thinking, someone's moaning me about something at work, and I'm thinking, wow, that is just like someone's first world problem. Yeah. And I'm sitting here in a hospital watching kids being ill, and they're totally different ends of the spectrum. And I don't know, did you feel similar to that? And how do you shut down to that? And
I felt similar. I tended to. So at that time, I was commuting to work as I do now in 2023 again. But I sort of just separated work and home into different modes, and I told myself that my job was very important to allow us. Obviously the basic needs to be able to provide, but also above that, the ability to have flexibility, the ability to be able to afford to drive to Great Ormond Street, for example, which just means it's easier for my wife to be able to organize appointments, whereas having to do it around public transport, for example, to be able to afford to, if push came to shove, stay in a hotel nearby if I wasn't able to stay in the hospital. So I sort of kept in my mind the importance of working hard and succeeding in work. And I also started to think, even at that early point in time, about how would we be able to manage the longer term effects of what Lily was going through. If she would be severely disabled when she's older, how could we afford to, get out of the house to be able to do that? If she would be unable to work as an adult, how could I support her through that? So I started to focus on my career as a mechanism to ensure the long-term success of. Do you think it was Lily's more
as a coping mechanism as well, for you to immerse yourself into something?
Absolutely. There's like a, perhaps selfish is the wrong word, but there's a selfish aspect behind being able to go and bury my head in work. And it took me a very long time to realize this, but I was sort of coping through work and actually would perhaps respond very, frustratingly or frustratedly to small problems at work,
right?
But be incredibly calm and collected to massive problems in Lily's treatment. And in a way, it was almost like a way of channeling that stress and emotion, but also being able to package that up in my head, because work to me is and remains a way for me to be able to support Lily and my family the best I can.
Did you tell people at work what was going on?
I did. I told the people. So I told the people immediately around me, but I didn't publicly advertise it to everybody.
Right.
Partly because it was such a quickly changing situation, and I needed to constantly keep people up to date, and that's hard to do.
Yep.
And partly in a way because I didn't want people to treat me differently. I didn't want, this is absolutely not true. It's not a valid fear, but my fear at the time was that I might lose opportunities.
Right. Okay.
I was worried that, if
as in what, they sort of discriminate against what's going on.
I wasn't worried about perhaps
You think that the at home might hold you back with what was going on at home?
Yeah,
like long-term planning for your future.
Long-term planning for my future, so that I knew that I'd made up enough. I knew that I'd made up sort of enough impression with the people immediately around me that they knew that, even if I took a week off at short notice, when I was back, I was going to be back and I was going to be on top of my work. But where I'm perhaps moving to a new area with people that don't know me, would they, if they knew my situation, would they be fully confident in me? So, and that was now, as a much more experienced person and as a manager, I know that wasn't a valid fear.
Yeah. But if you're new to the area.
But that was my fear at the time. And also, remember, this was pre-COVID, so we hadn't, the idea that everyone can just change their lives out of nowhere and adapt to a major situation wasn't commonplace. It's commonplace now to say, oh, I'm ill, so I'm going to work from home for the next week. That wasn't commonplace at that time. And so I had a lot of those fears. And so as a result, I tried to present at work as though everything was normal, everything was fine. And I wouldn't say I necessarily did a great job of that, but that's what I tried.
Did they at work, sort of your managers, your bosses, did they ever try and talk to you, ask you what was going on? How are you? And be empathetic towards you?
Absolutely.
They were good with that.
They were incredibly supportive. They created so much space for me.
Brilliant.
They would share their support to me. They tried to do things immediately to be able to help me in a practical sense. They obviously allowed me a lot of time off, and they allowed me a lot of flexibility. I also had quite a lot of long chats with them. One manager who I worked for at a later period at time actually sort of connected me with somebody who he knew who could give me some advice.
Okay.
With a situation that I was facing with Lily's treatment. I've had lots of long conversations with my managers at work and about how I've been doing, about the things I've been dealing with. I've found them to be incredibly supportive, and actually the slight separation, the fact that they're not my immediate family or immediate friends, almost makes it easier to
go
open
home
up.
And sort of
can go home and leave it on the table.
I found it easier to talk to people I didn't know.
Yeah,
in a sense.
Yeah.
And also, I don't know about you, but it's when there is a diagnosis like this and things, you think when people hear about it, they go, oh, I'm so sorry, and things like that. I remember having a go-to response, especially in a workplace environment. You just wanted to bury your head and not talk about it, because sometimes it's nice to escape it as well.
Yeah.
I don't know, you felt like going to work for me was an escape.
Yeah.
I didn't have to be surrounded by litmus paper with NG lines and feeding tubes, and I could escape it. And it was difficult as much as I probably want to spend more time at home, but I needed to get out. And I felt guilty in the sense that I was selfish by getting out. But I thought back, actually, no, you needed to manage what you were going through to be strong for what they were going through. Yeah. But, I kind of felt guilty as well for my wife, because she had the burden of the childcare. Yeah,
my wife was the same. And I think...
She let me know about it as well.
Yeah. I think, absolutely looking back, I could have achieved the same things I've achieved and balanced my work and home life better.
But how did you go through COVID? Because we talk about one of the biggest things is relationships. Yeah. And we talked about this before outside. It's not ever looked at properly, because the dynamics are so different. We talk about relationships. We both deal with it differently. Yeah. I don't know if you and Leander deal with it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. We deal with it completely differently and sort of meet in the middle with that. And I think I would say, and the COVID lockdown was actually an interesting test, where we went into that situation prepared and confident.
I bet that was frightening.
It was frightening for us from the perspective of Lily potentially getting ill. Yeah. Before they knew that it wasn't impactful to children.
As much as they tell you they're not worried about it with children.
Yeah. We were incredibly worried about that. We were incredibly worried about Lily catching it. We did not leave the house for 16 weeks, as in didn't even walk out the front door for 16 weeks. People would drop food at our door and we would go out and get it when they'd left. And that was the only way that we did anything.
But did you feel more isolated from the outside world? But everyone was isolated in a sense because they were on lockdown, but even more so, like you couldn't meet people outside when you're allowed to meet people outside. Did you manage to do any of that? Or
so for us, we didn't warm back up when the world started opening back up. We didn't warm back up as quickly as everyone else did. It took us months. For us, in the immediate period where lockdown first started, we felt like everyone was getting a bit of a taste of what we'd been going through for a long time. We felt like we were well prepared for it.
There's also there people wearing face masks, washing their hands. Actually done, because we went through.
We were doing that anyway.
It's like done us a favour in a sense because everyone was being clean.
So the Christmas before COVID, when COVID wasn't a thing, we had family members who were wearing face masks at Christmas. Right. At our request, because they were feeling under the weather and we didn't want Lily to catch it. So, and the other thing was just the crisis and the feeling of lack of control in the environment that was going on, that everybody felt during the initial lockdown, was how we had felt with our world being turned upside down for the 2 years prior. So because by the time COVID happened, we were 2 and a bit years into Lily's treatment and going through being parents of a child with severe illness. We felt like we came up with a plan and we executed that plan, and being isolated just allowed me and Leanna to put to the test what we'd already been coming up with in the years before that, which is even stronger,
as in
even
coping
more
strategies.
And bonding through our relationship and coping together and working as a team. And taking some pride in that, taking some pride in how well we can work as a team.
Explain some of those things, like what you did. Was there a conversation between you both at the start? Like how are you going to deal with this together?
So for Lily's first diagnosis, so not one specific conversation, but you could tell in the way we were figuring things out together that we were finding roles in what we were doing, and that we went through some crises in the very first few days that forced us to figure out how to work together really effectively. So a great example was we were trying to get hold of somebody. We went home from our local hospital and we were told we would be called by Great Ormond Street the Tuesday after a particular meeting that happens. It's a very normal procedure, and now we know not to worry about it at all. But at the time, as when it got to about 9:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning, we were freaking out, thinking, why haven't we been called yet? And again, like I said, knowing what I know now, there's an entire normal procedure that we had nothing to worry about. We were trying to get hold of somebody, and we were both trying to call. We were both trying to call different numbers and trying to get hold of people, and there was a very strange turn of events where somebody's assistant was off sick and somebody else had given us the wrong number, and it was almost like a comedy sketch, and where everything was going wrong, and we were both shouting at each other, both miscommunicating, trying to take out our frustration on one another, trying to make sense of the anxiety that we were feeling, with feeling sort of isolated and feeling like we didn't know what to do, to the point where I was actually upstairs trying to Google for numbers, and I had Lily, and Leanna had walked downstairs because Lily was crying and I was shouting, and she was trying to listen on the phone, and in that time Lily had crawled and actually fell down the stairs, and she was absolutely fine immediately. And that moment, Leanna and I had to switch from trying to figure out who would do what and how we were going to work together, to immediately switching into to just picking a role and trying to do the best we could. So I remember picking Lily up. I was I was so quick after her that in my mind, I remember she was almost like she had 3 steps still to fall down, and I was almost catching her. It felt like that. It wasn't.
Yeah.
It felt like I was so close behind her, and I grabbed her the moment she hit the ground, and I was picking her up, and I was trying to check her over, and I said to Leanna, right, you ring 999, and I'll check her over. And we suddenly went from sort of both failing to do anything and shouting at each other and being frustrated to both picking a role that we were going to do, doing the best we could. The cards fell, and we just took that. And she was straight on the phone and described the situation precisely to the person on the phone, and I was checking Lily over and figuring out what was wrong with her. And within about 20 minutes, Lily was calm. We had calmed down. We both were sort of, the bomb had gone off, and we realised, okay, we have to work together first. And we didn't have a conversation about that. There was just this mutual realisation that came through. And the phone rang, and the consultant we'd been waiting to speak to, the entire chaotic scenario had come about because of rang and said, I've heard you've been having a bit of a busy day, and said to us, do you want to come down to the hospital? And I said, absolutely, yes, I'll be there immediately. I said something silly to her, like, don't worry, I'll drive really fast, or something silly. And she was like, you don't need to do that. And just come down and we'll get her sorted. And I think from that moment, we both realized that how we would approach things is we would pick what we were going to do. We would communicate that to the other person, perhaps ask the other person what they can do. And we would just do the best we could for that thing that we were going to do. And ever since then, it's been like that with both me and Leanna, where we've said, you know, right, I'm going to ring so-and-so tomorrow. And you leave that person to do that. They're going to figure that out. Yeah. And you have complete trust.
I think that's
complete loyalty.
You're trusting everyone at that point as well, aren't you?
You're trusting everyone. You can trust. You feel like you can't trust anyone, but you can only succeed by trusting everyone.
Everything's out of your hands.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't control anything. Can't plan anything.
Yeah.
And it's all about trust.
Yeah, exactly.
And then you've got to trust each other. Well, like it makes you stronger. Like Fran and I are like strong now than we've ever been, because I think, like as you said as well earlier, something major goes like, I don't know about you, but I'm like prepared for it.
Yeah.
Like hopefully I never have to experience anything major again in my life, but you're just cool. And then the smaller things that wind me up. Yeah. I get wound up with smaller things, like someone beeping me in the car. Yeah. And what's that? That winds me up. But the major things, like yesterday, Rafe, my other son, he smashed the window in our kitchen. Yeah. Where Fran was going crazy. Yeah. Oh, calm down. It's all right.
You're fine with that.
We'll fix the window. It's fixable.
Can do that. Yeah.
Don't worry about it. Yeah. It's done. What's the worst that can happen? The window falls out. Yeah. But I just think you learn. I think you learn as well how to deal with speed bumps. Not speed bumps, but bumps in the road. Yeah. I think you just learn. Yeah. But I don't know about you, but I felt as well. It's like, when is this? Because the first couple of days you go through it all, and even now, like you've been going through it 5 years,
5.5 years.
Because you just feel like, when's the rain going to stop? Yeah. Yeah. Like I remember sitting back and thinking, when Hugh was doing well, I was thinking, one day I'm just going to sit back when it's all over and go, what the hell happened? Yeah. I'm going to have a beer in my hand on a beach.
Yeah, you think you'll be on a beach,
I don't know I'll be on a beach, but I'll be on a beach. No, I'll be with a beer in my hand.
End of a movie.
Yeah, just saying, what the hell happened here? Yeah. But I don't think it's ever like that, because when, like you say at the start, when something happens to you like this, it's all of a sudden your life's changed. Yeah. It's like, this is the chapter now. We're writing the book. Yeah. It's going off in a different tangent now. However, you feel like your life was moving in that direction. Like you said, you just got a house, job. You think you should be this. And I don't know about you, but I felt I watched other people through social media. I was resentful of them. Yeah. Why me? But I made a plan, like, right, okay, this is the way that it's felt, but we're going to get through it. And we're going to, whatever happened, we were going to be okay through it. Yeah. Nothing's going to sort of change the direction, but it's difficult because people on the outside don't understand it. Like,
no, they don't.
They must think I think people think I must be crazy. Yeah. And I'm like honestly, how do you get through it? What you do, and the same as yourself. You're a strong man, and the way you get through it as well, it's showing strength. And people from the outside go, "How do you?" I bet you have people say, "How do you get through it with strength?"
Yeah, it's funny that there's a few things come to mind there. So one thing I did want to call back to was I remember now that when COVID kicked off and the lockdowns and things started, Leanna and I did have one conversation, which was, if anyone can do this, it's us two. If anyone can get through this, absolutely fine. It'll be us two. And we had that conversation with each other just to say, like, just to almost switch our brains into that mode where, okay, we're now going to go into like hyper-focused execution mode where we're now going to get everything done. We're going to be on top of everything, and we're going to make sure that we get through this.
Yeah.
The other thing, it kind of links into that, which is like your point about strength, is that I was thinking about this on the way over, and that absolutely people, like, just like you said, people, I'm sure people think, God, what's he in such a bad mood for? What's his problem? Why is he so miserable? Or why is he having a go at me about this? Or why this, why that? What you got to realize is it's just getting up.
I hear you.
Just getting up, just facing the day takes an incredible amount of strength. And so to then be going about some normal business with 30% of me, 30% of me that's left to actually face that normal business is an achievement. And so absolutely, from the outside it might seem like that, but from the inside it's a huge achievement to just be doing that normal thing and being annoyed about it.
I also think as well,
caring about it.
People don't realise sometimes, as you said, getting up in the morning is the toughest bit.
Yeah, or
even any, like, I know people suffer from mental health and depression and stuff, and that is the toughest bit of anything, but people don't get enough credit for themselves or give themselves enough credit about how well they've done that day.
Yeah, just facing
the day. And I say it to Fran as well sometimes. It's just, someone said it to me, just sometimes just take a look. Oh, I saw some picture on Instagram or something. Just one day, just sit back and think, actually, you've done quite well. Actually, it was the book, that Charles Mackay book.
Right, yeah.
The Fox and the Mole.
I've seen that.
There was a picture and it says, sometimes you don't realise how hard it is to get up in the morning.
Yeah.
And I think that's sometimes we just need to give ourselves a bit of credit to, like, you, me, our wives, even our grandparents, to just look if they're wondering. And I think they found it hard as well because they weren't in the immediate vicinity of Hugh and Lily. They don't. Yeah. If they're from an outsider, they don't know what's going on. They don't understand it. And also, no one knows how to talk to you unless they've been through. Like, I can see when you said that, and I'm like, yeah, I get that. How hard it is to get up sometimes and just carry on. And then people also forget as well. I remember a situation. I was in a car park, actually, near where we live, and a bloke was giving it to me in a car. I was trying to get out, and the whole thing, I was trying to get back to take Hugh to hospital for his COVID test so he can go and have chemo. And I was stressed, and some bloke was giving it large to me in the car. Like, I'm not any. He was screaming. I was like, and I actually got irate because he was blocking the whole thing. And he actually pulled his window down next to me and said, "What's your problem?" I said, "Mate, I got a child with cancer at home, and I can see, and he needs to get to hospital now." And I could see his face. He didn't know what to say, and his wife started crying. I said, "Just be careful. You don't know what's going on in someone's life."
You don't know. Yeah.
I said, "I might look like I'm all right." And that's what they say. It's like the duck above water, isn't it? The legs are flying.
Legs are flying. And I think that's the thing is, your instinct, or my instinct, is to try and solve problems, try and succeed. Treat this whole thing as something that needs to succeed in Lily's treatment and in our family life. And so, in my mind, if I drag that down by, like, bringing too much of my own problems into it, I'm only going to lower the chance of us succeeding. I'm only going to make that worse. If I don't get up in the morning and do what I need to do to contribute for our family, who's going to do that? Somebody needs to cover that. And so it's...
How do you cope with that? Honestly,
how do I cope with it?
Because it's difficult. We, as guys, we don't talk about it enough. It's like, how do we do that? Because there's people out there going to listen to this and say, like, they might not be experiencing the same things that we've gone through, but they might be just for other reasons that may seem small in comparison to what we've gone through, or maybe bigger than what we've gone through. Yeah. But they think, like, how did you get about it? Like, did you speak to anyone, or?
So I think the best way I could summarize it is that after years of this now, and I can say I'm fairly well practiced in it, is that, and it comes back to that point about how much I have to give to just get through normal things and how much of a percentage of me is left to give to those normal things. So I feel like I have to be the best possible version of myself that I can be, so that there's enough left to be able to face the challenges that I need to face, and to be able to do anything from normal daily life to facing the like major problems that Lily
How'd you
has.
get that version of you?
Through a lot of therapy.
So you speak to a counsellor?
I've had multiple different therapists over the years, and seeing one at the moment, and through various different avenues. So a lot of therapy, through working on creating space for myself. So that was various different hobbies and things over the years, and most recently for the last year and a half, that's been by playing golf once a week, where I just focus on golf.
And it's 4 hours on a
4 hours.
outside.
I go at earliest possible time on a Sunday to try and get back about 11 in the morning for the kids. So it is by doing the very best I can in everything that I do, so that I'm warmed up and ready to face the big challenges. So I treat the small things with the same seriousness I do the big things, so that I'm a well sharpened sword, if you like.
Yeah.
I also do it by constantly thinking about things that make life harder for me that don't need to. So a year and a half ago, I quit drinking because that was making life harder for me. I was using that as a crutch to sort of calm down and escape from problems.
Or at home?
No, in the evenings, like just drinking in the evenings, basically to try and wind down. But realizing that was actually slowing me down. That was actually leaving me feeling groggy in the morning. It was giving me the wrong way to express my feelings. It was giving me too many negative situations. And I don't mean negative. I mean negative as in where I would get upset and not be able to process my emotions. Vulnerable and
not in control.
And in an unproductive or in a negative way. So, quit drinking, thinking about my health, thinking about my mental health more so, focusing on my relationships, focusing on Leanna and my relationship with Leanna. We work very hard on our relationship. We try and do things together very regularly. Thankfully, we have very supportive family who can help create space for that. By also committing to creating a lifestyle around Lily's illness. So we got a dog and bought a car that the dog can go in, and so we've committed to sort of having a lifestyle that is focused around Lily and
allowing her to live in the best way that she can by adapting to the circumstances
and me trying to make every decision and trying to think about every turning point in life and how that can contribute to Lily's illness, or how that can contribute to my family.
Do you feel like now you can plan a bit more, or do you look long term in the future, or do you concentrate on short term always still? Because it's hard.
We concentrate on short and medium term. Medium mostly. So we try not to do anything that would be too hard to unravel. If we needed to suddenly change. But we do try to also create as much of a normal life and as much of a life for ourselves and for our younger daughter, Luna, as well, and our family around us. So we tried to create a lifestyle that's built around Lily's illness and supporting her, but we try not to hold her or ourselves back from that. And so that's why, for example, I picked... So golf as a hobby for me is perfect, because I can balance that around whatever we need to do. I can do it anywhere. If we needed to move in future for whatever reason, I can move. It's not tied to an individual thing. It's my golf clubs in the back of my car. It doesn't require me to go away. It doesn't, but it also does allow me to get out. So there's a balance there in picking that as a particular sport to do, where it's very good for my mental health, but it's not something I can't unravel if Lily's situation changes immediately and I need to move or quit or stop doing it or whatever. So I think about those things in everything that we do, and I think about how to balance those things.
Do you think that affects mental health a little bit? Like not being able to plan so much?
I think it, yeah. And I mentioned earlier a little bit about like things I grieve for, and I think,
or what you miss out on.
Yeah, I think one of the things because in particular with Lily's illness being such a long-term thing, such a life-changing thing, I grieve more for the things that we've missed out on, the things that she's missed out on, the things that we've suffered, and the things that we will miss out on in the future as a result of it as well. There are plenty of things that would be entirely different were it not for her illness. And while on one side I described how we've accepted that and actually embraced that, on the other side it is very difficult from a mental health standpoint to actually process. I think
it's hard. I think social media makes it harder as well, watching other people get on with things.
Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, that's why we set that platform up, because I was fed up with seeing people's first world problems. Yeah. And you think that's what I long for. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I'd seen people jump into a swimming pool and things like that. That was sort of the thing I longed for the most, and what people were moaning about. And
yeah,
it's difficult. It does ruin you, put you in a different way. You get resentful a little bit towards other people, but then you've got to rein yourself back and say, actually, it's not their fault.
Yeah.
And I don't know about...
I'd say I feel exactly the same. You feel resent towards what others get to do, and you feel gutted really to the things that you and your family have missed out on. I think that social media absolutely doesn't help with that. And certainly I remember a lot of instances of both myself and Leanna seeing people's situations and saying to each other, you know, they think they've got it hard, kind of thing. And the other side of that, though, is there's always a bigger fish as well, because we know so many people through our network and community who've suffered much worse situations than us, yourself included. And so you see on one side people bemoaning problems that are much more trivial than yours, and on the other side you see people with worse.
My view on it all is everything is relative. So what happened with me is completely relative to me. What happens with you and Lily is completely relative to you. And that's the thing that I think is hard, because I come across a lot of parents nowadays, and I look at it and I look on social media and the kids are doing amazing, and I'd love that for that to be Hugh, but it was never going to be Hugh. And that's the thing you have to get as a parent. I understand that. And that's an acceptance, and that's part of grief for me, is accepting that. And I feel like I've dealt with it really well in the sector. I do accept that, and I don't resent anyone, because some people say, "Oh, but you find that hard." I said, "No, I don't. I find it amazing. I'm so happy for them. Yeah, they are doing it, and it is tough. And you see other people, but it's difficult to separate. You've got to separate yourself from it as well. And also, I would say as well that, for example, COVID for me was the greatest time. Although the second part of COVID, Hugh was ill, but I would never had a chance to bond with my kids like that.
Right, yeah.
Do you know about the same with you? Like, when we were in lockdown, you're probably the same with Lily, is that you had a chance to bond with her. Like, you'd never have a chance to bond with her again. You'll never get that time back. Yeah. And I watch all these memes and videos on Instagram and say, kids are like to 5 years old, 6 years old, that's when they're children. That's when they want you the most, and the best time. You never get that time back. And I was blessed to have that. And I think COVID, the way when you get this time spent with them, and I used to, when Hugh was ill, I used to like going to hospital, because on my own with him, because I used to spend like quality time with him. Yeah. And that sounds really strange and a bit like people are going, "What are you doing?" But actually it is. It's like quality time. And my missus used to send me voice message. "Oh, I like hospital with Daddy because I get jelly beans. I watch iPad all night." And actually it was fun for me, because I used to enjoy, sounds really strange, being there with him for 3 nights in a row.
No, I can see that.
But it's like a bond that you create. And that's the same. You've done it with Lily, create this massive bond with her that most guys wouldn't actually have that in other circumstances.
I think that's true. And I think certainly as she's gotten older, I found going to hospital with her more fun. And more recently, when she had a surgery a month ago, we played Switch all the time, and we were doing things like that. And I did have quite a lot of fun moments. I think when she was a baby and we were in hospital, it was hell because there wasn't.
They can't tell you what's wrong, babies.
They can't tell you what's wrong, and they really don't like sitting in a bed all day. Right. So there's different. There's been a varying range of experiences that I've had. And I would say that one of the things, as you're saying that, and as I was saying it earlier, reflecting on how I feel with, like I said, people with simpler problems versus people on the other side with harder problems. I remember when I first started, in the first couple of years of dealing with this, when I spoke to therapists, I said that, I felt that I'd been lucky. I felt that it could be so much worse. I felt that other people had it harder time, and I felt that I almost shouldn't be feeling the way I was feeling because things were looking positive, and because she had only lost her eyesight and had hormonal problems, and in the grand scheme of things, compared to some other children, that wasn't that bad compared to what we were around. Almost like, if maybe it's not a great analogy, but if somebody's in a war, say, and they lose their foot, they might think, well, I could have lost my eye, or I could have lost all my legs or something. I haven't got it that bad, but that's still a significant lifestyle change. And so in the more recent years, what I've come to process is that, and through therapy has helped me with this a lot, is that I've suffered a great deal, and actually it took till end of 2021. So I was nearly 4 years into all of this at that point, started to actually feel compassion towards myself for what I had been through, and ignoring any time I might have had a bad reaction, or any time I lost my temper, or any time I said something I shouldn't have said. I started to just feel like no matter what, I didn't deserve it, and no matter what, I didn't ask for it, and I've done the best I could with the tools I've been given, and I feel sorry for myself for that. I feel upset to have had to have gone through it, even though there's been people with a lot worse. And in a way,
you didn't ask for it.
I didn't ask for it.
And then also you've dealt with it. That's what I would always say. You've dealt with it remarkably. No, you have. And then to come and speak about it, it's hard to speak about it. And you come and dealt with it. And I think it's always brave to say you've had counselling for it. I'm always the same. I say I haven't had it for 4-5 months. And even now, I think, I might need to go again, a little top up again. Yeah. But speaking about it is the best. But sometimes you sit back and you think, actually, what would have I done differently? So because I think, what would I have done differently back then in 2020 when Hugh was diagnosed? What would a 2023 Stephen tell a 17? What would it tell 27 Stephen?
I think I would think that the long-term things will work themselves out anyway. Everything smooths out over the long term.
The storm subsides.
Yeah. So, and that I needed to, in a weird way, just focus on being in the moment and suffering the pain at that point in time, instead of trying to bottle that up and fix the problem immediately. Actually, just suffering through it and feeling those emotions at that point in time, and allowing those emotions to be.
Allowing yourself to feel what you feel. It's so hard, isn't it? Because you try and suppress things.
Tried to suppress it, knowing at the time that suppressing it would turn out bad, but thinking, well, I'll be able to, no problem, I'll deal with it then. If I'll suppress all these emotions and I'll deal with it in 2 years when she's fixed. Knowing now, 2 years later she would have been fixed and then regressed, and you'd have the emotions of her regression to go through as well as the original emotions to process. So I think it applies to so many things in life. Just allowing yourself to be in the moment with what you're dealing with, knowing that on the long-term basis things will smooth themselves out.
Just staying in the present, I think, is a big thing.
I was very worried about how how it was going to, I was almost so worried about the butterfly effect of that one thing and how that was going to change our entire lives so much. But there's things that have remained the same regardless, and there's things that would have changed anyway. And the COVID pandemic happening after Lily's, 3 years after Lily's diagnosis, in retrospect actually taught me that Lily could have been perfectly healthy and our lives, like everybody's lives, turned upside down in 2020. And so much of what's different about my life now is different because of the COVID pandemic compared to Lily getting severely ill. And so where I was so worried at that time about how it was going to change our lives and how we would get through it, I've actually learned through multiple major disasters that we can process it, and we will carry on anyway.
I think there's no choice, is there? As a parent, you have to get through it.
Yeah. So I definitely think, like, when we found out Leanna was pregnant, so this going back to early 2016 now, we found out Leanna was pregnant. I was finishing a master's degree at university, had a couple of months left. And there was no question we were gonna have Lily, and we were gonna make the best we could. And so there was one moment where I came to terms with that responsibility that I was going to take on. And from there, I have not given myself a choice but to live up to that responsibility and to do whatever it takes for my family and for my children. And that includes Leanna in that as well. In that moment, in fact, I'd probably made that commitment to her long before then, but in that moment of her being pregnant, it solidified for me that commitment that I was going to do whatever it takes to look after her and to have the best life we could, no matter what happens in future.
It sounds like you, we talk about like adversity and stuff, but like you've got a journey, and to me, it sounds like you've dealt with it and you're dealing with it, and just like
dealing with it. Yeah. Thank you.
What is the future for you to deal with things? What are you going to do? What can you do better for you think in the future for you to add tools or things for you to deal with it?
I think so. Mindfulness is a big one I'm working on.
Okay.
Been working on that for a long time. And, like I said, to the question of, what would I do differently? I think trying to be more in the present, trying to allow and experience emotions and experience life more in the immediate term.
It's almost like a game. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
But I think it is a game because you're trying to stay in that present.
Yeah.
On everything.
Yeah.
And it's the future or the what if. And that can be applied to everything. That's what gets you, that's what screws your head up.
Yeah. You're worried about what if.
What if, but what if might be the best thing.
Yeah.
No one knows.
Yeah, exactly. And
there's no point. You're worrying about yesterday. You can't change that.
Yeah.
And I think that's where there was a film, I can't remember, a cartoon. Oh, Kung Fu Panda. He said the present is a present.
Yeah, yeah.
You stay in the present, and it is you've got to appreciate everything that is happening right now, and sometimes just take it in. I remember I wish I did it more. Like for me, I just appreciate the present and not take advantage of that time.
Absolutely. That's absolutely what I'm going to be continuing to work on. The other thing is, along those lines, trying to be the best I can, the best version of myself.
I think you're doing it, Steve.
Trying to be the best version of myself that I can, and trying to, through that, balance all the different aspects of my life, including bringing people around me through my journey to understand where I'm coming from, so that I can live in that present more. Because if I'm feeling particular set of emotions at work, being able to just say to the people around me, this is how I'm feeling, I'm going to go off and get a coffee or have a quiet moment or whatever, instead of trying to bluntly trudge through everything to perhaps no end, just experiencing what's going on around me more, appreciating that time, and just continue working on being the best I can for my family, for my daughters, and for myself ultimately. And I think that it's a strange way of problem solving, but it's basically, rather than trying to frantically address that problem, just trying to build up your strengths, build up the things around you, work on your strengths and work on your weaknesses to just allow you to be able to deal with that and any other problems that might come.
Well, listen, it's been brilliant talking to you today. I think we talk about in the intro about inspiring journeys of how you dealt with things that have happened, insurmountable stuff, things that have mountains to climb, and like we've both been through a lot of crap. Yeah. And being sat here as a dad to another dad, are both experienced some awful stuff. And like I say, you've done well. She's got a good dad. She's got a good husband, and you've done amazingly well, even to get through the journey you're on now. And like I say, you've got all the tools to go for the future. And hopefully someone out there listening to this will just think, do you know what? That's how you do it. But
thank you.
Appreciate you coming on.
No, thanks very much. It's been a pleasure.
Brilliant.